Hello, beautiful friend. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep. Also, this podcast is here to help you deepen in your relationship with the beautiful angels who love you so and help you open to your own innate magic and light. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And you can learn more about my offerings and classes tomorrow morning when you wake up at illuminatingsouls.com. I offer one-on-one angel sessions that are just beautiful. It's a beautiful way to gain clarity and healing and get to have some intimate time with the angels. I also offer soul mentoring, which, if you're moving through a significant passage of life, soul mentoring provides for consistency, where we meet each week. And when I say we, I mean not only you and I, but also the angels. And it is an extraordinary way to help create a foundation of love and support as you navigate times of change. And then I also offer a variety of classes and beautiful circles, so be sure to visit me at Illuminating Souls on Facebook or my website, and we'll be sure to connect. But for now, my beautiful friend, it is time for you to rest. So I invite you to take a beautiful, nice, big, deep breath in and out, and snuggle on in. And I will say, as I prepare to bring forward this episode for you, I am becoming aware of a line of energy I am feeling. So, in all likelihood, you've heard the term empath before, yes? An empath is one who feels emotions and energies of others or of the world at large. And I've been doing this work long enough that there are certain signals that I receive that almost always mean the same thing. And as I started this broadcast, I am becoming aware of a tightness in my throat. Now, don't worry, this is not mine. It is a signal from my intuitive, empathic body about some of the energy that is present for our Sleepy Bedtime Blessings community. This may be for you, this may be for another listener, but I will tell you how it feels. It feels like there's a lot of tenderness present. And tenderness can mean a lot of things. It can be grief. It can be fear. It can be deep fatigue. And so I just want to let you know that if you are one who is feeling tenderness in this moment, that the angels and I are surrounding you with love. This is not what I expected to be speaking about this evening, but I have learned to surrender to the wisdom of the angels. You know, this moment of getting ready to sleep, it's a time when we are alone with our thoughts, and when the echo of the day and whatever is transpiring in our lives becomes louder sometimes. So I want to invite you to take a nice deep breath in and release. And with your permission, we will ask the angels to come and bring healing to you. And I am asking them to bring healing to your throat chakra as well. That if there are any tears present, that it's okay to let them flow. Tears are a way that our physical body helps release energy. The other signal that the throat tightness often reflects is an inhibition of the authentic voice. And so, if you are feeling a little claustrophobic in how you're using your voice, maybe you feel that you are not being heard, or maybe you are feeling reluctant to share your truth, take a big deep breath in and release. And again, we're going to bring healing to your throat chakra. Just clearing away any old hurts or wounds, any old beliefs that no longer serve you. Whether it's from this lifetime or others, that you have permission to be heard. And you have permission to use your voice in ways that are meaningful for you. You know, if you've ever taken a class with me or had a session, you'll know that I start every session and every class with a prayer. I haven't yet shared this prayer on the podcast. I use a little bit of a different one where we ask the beautiful angels on high to join us. But I love praying out loud. There is something about praying or saying affirmations or visions out loud because there is a sacred connection that happens when our authentic self moves through our throat chakra. Spoken word is powerful. So let's clear the way for you to connect with your beautiful voice, your beautiful truth. And for those of you who may not have ever had a session or class with me, I'll be happy to share with you the prayer that I usually begin with. It shifts every time. It's not exactly the same. But what I do is I invite whoever is assembled with me to take a big, deep breath in as we gently connect with the heart of God. And Father, Mother God, just now we ask for the clearing. We ask to be surrounded, uplifted, and filled with the clear white light of divine love. And angels, guides, ascended masters, and teachers of light, we invite you to join us here. We ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of divine love that is calibrated perfectly for each of the beloveds who are listening to this message. I ask that you bring waves of healing, of love, of inspiration, and of light in service to the highest and best good. And I ask that only that which is for the highest and best transpire. And for this and so much more, we are so grateful. And so it is. Amen. Just breathe with me. And if you have prayers or intentions that you wish to seed into our circle of light, I invite you to do so now. Just go into your heart. And you can say them silently, or if you want to say them aloud, you can do that too. Feel the words going through your vocal cords. So what might that sound like? It might sound like, God, I ask that you watch over me. God, I ask that as I sleep, you clear away any fear or doubt or worry, and help me come into a brighter experience of life. God, I ask that you bring me sparks of inspiration, that you bring forward resources and magic and serendipity to help me awaken to even more of who I am as a divine being in human form. And then you breathe. And I realize that your words may not be my words. You have to remember, I've been doing this a long time. I have no shortage of words to share. When I was at the University of Santa Monica, which was a wonderful 2-year program for spiritual psychology, they would have us work with affirmations. And the first weekend of the program, they led us into a meditation and had us connect with a quality that we were going to be working with for the first year. And the quality that came forward for me was self-love, because at that time I did not know how to love myself. I was very present to my flaws and my shortcomings, and I really only loved myself through the eyes of others, so that when someone else loved me, I could feel love. But when that love was removed from the room, as it were, I would feel bereft. So my whole journey of that first year was to learn how to love Laurel, to learn how to love myself. And that first weekend, they had us attune to an affirmation that we would use. And I'm guided to share with you what my affirmation was. The affirmation says, I am experiencing joyful and radiant self-love, and I am loving me. And I am trusting in my knowingness and in my magnificence. And I am enthusiastically listening to the magic in my soul as it leads me on this beautiful journey as Laurel. And the thing about affirmations, this is what they taught us at USM, was that they only needed to feel 50% true. And I can tell you that when I first started using that affirmation, it felt much more like a prayer than a truth. And I would say it while I was driving in my car on the way to work. I would say it out loud. I would get the energy moving in my body and imagine that it was true. And so sometimes I would say it in this vibrancy. I would claim it for myself. I am experiencing joyful and radiant self-love. And I am loving me. And I have to tell you, I know the grammar on that is not correct, but it is the way the words came through me at the time, and I trusted the vibration of them to help me. There were other times the affirmation came through me as a prayer from my sad self, as a request. But for a year straight, most days I would say that affirmation out loud. And the next year I would start hiking around the Santa Monica Mountains, which is a whole other story. And sometimes my friends and I would stand on the edge of the canyon and we'd yell our affirmations into the ocean, which felt great to us. I'm sure the neighbors were not happy, but it was over those 2 years that I learned the power of using our voice for igniting change within us. We can't always see where we're going or how we're going to get there. Quite often, the shifts we look to cultivate in our lives come to us through our imagination, through vibration, through prayer, because it takes time to understand who and what we are becoming when we are moving through transformation. For several years of my life, as I was going through my awakening, I could sense what was happening, but I really did not know where it would take me. I had no idea I would wind up doing this work. If you had told me at the beginning of my experience at University of Santa Monica that I would leave my corporate job and teach people how to connect with the angels, I would have bet against you, because no part of it would have felt true to me. It would have seemed like a fairy tale. I didn't even know that I had a connection with angels back then. So there is some sort of medicine coming through this episode for our community, whether that is for you specifically or someone else who is listening. I had a different intention of what I was going to bring forward in this episode, but when I felt the tightness in my throat as I began this broadcast, I knew the angels had a different intention, and I have been co-creating with them for so long that I am humbled and amazed by how they show up in this space. You know, whenever two or more are gathered in God's name, miracles happen. And maybe this is one of your miracles right now. Maybe the words that I am broadcasting are for your heart. And you're wondering, how did she know that I needed to hear this right now? And I say to you, I didn't. The angels did. You know, as we become more aware of this journey, it is astounding, these God moments that God and the universe and the angels orchestrate for us, right? It's breathtaking. So just take a deep, deep, deep breath in. And let's release that together. God is here right now with you. You, my beautiful beloved, are a bright, shining breath of God who has incarnated in this time and space to amplify the vibration of love on this planet. And it is not your responsibility to heal and clear everything. You are not capable of that, nor am I. But each one of us embodies a subset of consciousness that is our identity right now. And the journey is to hold it up to the light, hold up our past, hold up our foibles, hold up our challenges, hold up our love, hold it all up to the light so that we are seeding into collective consciousness these molecules of beingness that reflect the authentic truth of our journey. Who you are matters. You matter. You get to take up space in this world. You get to experience love. You get to incubate dreams that bring your heart great joy. You get to blossom open to all that you are. And you have a team of angels who love you beyond time and space. So take a deep breath in and release. And I will also affirm that as this message has been flowing through me, I have had waves of deep heat, which is also a sign that the angels are here. You probably know this already, but if you're kind of new to the work that I do, I am a channel. What does that mean, right? Well, as a channel, I have a way of raising my vibration and my consciousness to intentionally connect with the angels and guides who I work with. And they shift their energy to blend with mine. And it allows them to bring their energy closer to physical world reality. It's wonderful. Every time I channel, I feel better. They bring forward messages and light, and it's such a blessing. And that's part of what infuses this broadcast with so much love for you, is they flow through this channel. So this broadcast is for you. That this moment has been orchestrated for you to receive, to bring healing light into all dimensions of your timeline, past and present, and the mystery of what is yet to be. And just breathe, and you get comfortable and cozy. Snuggle on in. This is your time to rest. And as you can feel, the angels on high are already here, my friend. They have been with you since before you hit play on this episode. There is a clearing taking place. I can feel it in my body. As I bring this forward, I can feel the energy in my heart chakra growing lighter and lighter. Breathe in the love that is here for you. Allow yourself to flow into the center of your heart where the angels infuse you with love. And this is your time to receive. As bringers of light, we are very good at giving love. We're not so good at receiving love. Remember my affirmation, self-love. So allow yourself to receive this love. Receive love. Let it kindle in your heart. Let the angels help you remember what it is to be loved in the deepest parts of your beingness. Because this kind of love kindles itself. It replicates in the most wonderful way to help you embody this love, independent of whatever is happening around you. This kind of love will never be taken from you. It exists always and forever. So you breathe and release and give yourself permission to drift off into a wonderful expression of rest. And with your permission, the angels will stay and watch over you and help to clear and balance your energy field so that when it is time for you to wake up, that you will do so feeling lighter than before. And I will say, as I say these words, I feel such bright joy flowing through me right now from the angels. Such a lightness of spirit and joy is coming in now. Allow yourself to be elevated by it as the angels welcome you into this moment. And they are so deeply grateful for the opportunity to love upon you. And I am just breathing with you. There is goodness here for you. I can feel it. Thank you for receiving these blessings. All right, and I'll tell you what. Now I'm going to read to you. You drift off. I promise I won't read anything too important. Tonight I'm guided to read to you a short biography of Louisa May Alcott that was published in the American Men of Letters book, 1861 to 1896, written by Henrietta Christian Wright. And this was published in 1897. And even though it says American Men of Letters, it does include a biography of Louisa May Alcott, Frances Hodgson Burnett, and another woman, I believe. So, there you go. And I will say that I have been having a resurgence of a love affair with Little Women that was really brought about by this podcast when I started reading it to you. I don't really recall loving Little Women all that much growing up. But over the past few months, I was guided to go back and read it again, and I've watched one of the movies, and I watched a 3-part Masterpiece Theater edition that was done a couple years ago, and I don't know, I've fallen in love with her writing again. And so I thought it would be good, sleepy bedtime material to read to you about her life a little bit. You can drift off. There's no plot line you need to stay current on. Just listen until you drift off, and the angels and I are going to keep you company. Louisa May Alcott, 1833 to 1888. Louisa May Alcott, though born in Germantown, Pennsylvania, was by inheritance a child of New England, of which her father and mother were both natives. At the time of her birth, her father had charge of a school, which 2 years later he gave up and returned to Boston, removing in turn to Concord when Louisa was 8 years of age. All the world has read in Little Women the chronicle of that happy childhood passed in the shadow of the Concord elms, and the experiences of the sisters Beth, Meg, Amy, and Jo have won a place in the American literature which the child heart will never willingly let go. Undoubtedly the liveliest and brightest of the merry group of girls was Louisa herself, whose wit made stock out of the household calamities, and whose ambition made defeat but an incentive to fresh endeavor. 2 generations of children have now thrilled with delight over the recitals which have made that home history, a great part of which is autobiographical, one of the most sympathetic revelations of childhood ever given to the world. For above and beyond the tale of merry adventure or mad escapade, there thrills that reminiscent quality to which the heart of childhood ever responds. Jo toiling from cellar to garret in her childish yet serious masquerade of Pilgrim's Progress, or Beth perplexed with tender pity over the mastery of death, are alike typical of the genuine thoughts of the child, and the youthful reader is often living over his own experiences when perusing this fascinating record. This unique charm, which is necessarily absent in great works of imagination, will no doubt give the story of Louisa Alcott's early days a permanent place in literature, as it has already accorded it a fame which rivals the classic renown of Robinson Crusoe and Robin Hood. The happy life of the Alcott girls at Concord was shared by the children of Emerson, Hawthorne, Channing, and other prominent men of letters whose homes were then in that quiet village. Mr. Alcott was his children's teacher, and very often he was their most genial playfellow. Their mother, a woman of noble nature and rare force of character, was their tender friend as well as their loving adviser. All the children kept diaries, and in Louisa's is recorded many of her struggles with a rather tempestuous nature and many earnest resolves to be a good child. Scattered here and there through the pages of the diary are found little notes from her mother, commending some special act of obedience or self-restraint, praises dear to the child's heart, whose highest ambition was to be dutiful. To the Alcott children, books of course were familiar. Before she could read, Louisa played with books, building houses of histories and bridges of dictionaries. Even then, she was possessed with a desire to write, and inscribed strange characters in the blank pages of the books. When the time for lessons and reading actually began, the children all became omnivorous readers, Louisa devouring novels, histories, poetry, and fairy stories with unappeasable appetite. Being a New England child, she was also taught to sew, becoming so skillful in this accomplishment that she set up a doll's dressmaking establishment, which became famous for its select styles and was patronized by all the children in the neighborhood. The Concord house had a large garden and barn attached, both of which were a delight to the children. In the garden, their father gave them practical lessons in botany and in the study of nature, and in the barn they held meetings, discussed books, and acted plays. Once they found a little robin lying cold and starved on the garden walk. They warmed and fed the pretty thing, and Louisa, full of tender pity, celebrated the event in her first poem, The Robin. The verses pleased her mother, whose praise was very sweet to the 8-year-old child. From this time she frequently wrote verses inspired by the circumstances of her childish life. Her prose efforts were always more ambitious. Dramas and tales of heroic adventures were the only things thought worthy of her pen, and the plays were undoubtedly a success. They were acted in the barn, and for the time being the real Cinderella walked before the eyes of the audience, and the brave prince truly waked the sleeping beauty with a kiss. By the time she was 11 years old, Louisa, though so famous among the children of her set as an author of lively plays, was storying her mind with good literature. She read Scott's novels, Goldsmith, The Life of Martin Luther, and the English poets outside of the daily lessons, and the daily household tasks, for the Alcotts were poor, and the girls had each her special work. Between 11 and 15, Louisa passed the years at Fruitlands, a little settlement that Mr. Alcott had founded near Concord. It was during this time that the children learned that in the coming years their mother must look to them for help in the support of the family, and they bravely set themselves to the task. Louisa, in particular, was inspired by a passion to be her mother's helper. Her whole soul was devoted to this object, and every scheme which presented itself to her mind had this end in view. For herself she cared as little as it was possible. Only one little wish and ambition did she have, and that was to possess a little room of her very own where she might retire and think her thoughts without interruption, and to do such work as came to her. In one of those sweet correspondences which the old diary has preserved, she confessed this desire to her mother. In an answering note, we learn that the overworked and overworried mother found time and means somehow to accomplish this desire, and the little room, with work basket and desk by the window and a door that opened into the garden, made glad the heart of the unselfish child. About this time, Emerson presented her with Goethe's Correspondence with the Child, a book that fired her imagination and introduced what she had termed the romantic period of her youth. She was 15, and it suddenly occurred to her that it would be an interesting thing to have a friendship with Emerson as existed between Goethe and the child Bettina. She took to writing letters which, however, were never sent. She wandered around by moonlight and sat at midnight under the trees looking at the stars. Presently, however, her New England common sense came to the rescue. She realized that her poetry was nonsense, and that she, in fact, had been very silly to try and worship, as a romantic hero, one whose friendship had from the earliest years led her soul into noble paths. When Louisa was 18, her serious ambition was to write plays and become a successful actress. Her sisters had entire confidence in her ability to do both, and much labor was spent over the production and enacting of the lurid dramas. It was a great event when the manager of a Boston theater actually consented to bring out one of these plays, called The Rival Prima Donnas. Although from some mistake of management, it was never produced. Later, a farce called Nat Bachelor's Pleasure Trip was produced at the Howard Athenaeum, and was fairly approved by the public and press. During these early days of playwriting, the Alcott girls were striving in every way to share the burden of family expenses. Louisa sewed, taught, and wrote, but none of these things paid very well. The family poverty was a real and very distressing fact, and no way seemed to open toward a successful fight against it. By the time she was 22, however, Louisa had decided that her talent lay in the way of authorship. She, at that time, published her first book, a little volume of tales that she had written for Emerson's daughter, Ellen, and which came out under the title Flower Fables. This book contained some pretty fancies and showed some talent, but it is now only valuable as marking the beginning of a successful career. Many short stories and poems had by this time found their way to different papers and periodicals, and for the next 7 years her pen was busy, though the remuneration she received was not entirely gratifying. But the pleasure which this success brought was saddened by the fatal illness of Beth, Louisa's favorite sister. After 2 years of suffering, Beth's gentle spirit slipped away, leaving a place forever desolate in Jo's faithful heart. The old revered friends Emerson and Thoreau helped to carry the little worn-out body to its last resting place in Sleepy Hollow, and Louisa wrote in her diary that she knew what death meant. In 1861, Miss Alcott published her novel Moods, the most ambitious work she had yet attempted, and one on which she placed many fond hopes. But although Moods represented all the ideality and poetry of life, as it then appeared to the young author, it was not a great success. She had toiled faithfully over its composition and had wrought it into many of her own girlish dreams. But the heroine was not real, and many of the situations were artificial. The defect lay in the author's own gift, which did not reach out to work of purely imaginative character. Miss Alcott was bitterly disappointed over the meager success of Moods, which she attributed to the many changes she had made in it through the advice of the different publishers who had rejected it. In spite of the fame that her other books brought, Moods always held a warm place in her heart. Her true work for literature was indicated by an experience which widened her mind and expanded her sympathies as no girlish daydreams could ever do. This was her life as a hospital nurse at the front during the early days of the Civil War. The Alcotts had no sons to devote to the cause of the Union, but they sent their bravest and brightest one, the daughter whom the father so proudly called duty's faithful child, to serve her country in its hour of need. Miss Alcott was detailed to the Georgetown Hospital, and here she entered heart and soul into her duties. The hospital was poorly equipped, and both patients and nurses suffered from bad air, impure water, and damp rooms, but all put thoughts of self in the background and kept as cheery and bright as possible. The new nurse was a great favorite with the soldiers, who appreciated her fun and laughter, her unfailing devotion, and the womanly tenderness which never found her too tired to write messages to their far-off friends. Though often worn out, she never omitted her own home letters, which were faithful transcriptions of the daily hospital life. All its sadness and pathos appealed to her, and its humorous side, for it had one, found a response in her merry heart. Her experience here ended after 6 weeks owing to a serious attack of typhoid fever. The bad air and drainage of the hospital had done their work, and Miss Alcott returned to Concord, where she was for many months an invalid. She never entirely recovered this shock to her health, and the invalidism from which she suffered in her last years in reality dated from this time. Upon the suggestion of a friend, she resolved to throw her experience at Georgetown into literary form, and she wrote the first 3 of her hospital sketches. These immediately attracted so much attention that the series grew into a book which was published in 1865. This work, so full of real life, of the beauty of heroism, patience, and duty, bought Miss Alcott her first taste of fame. Eminent men, among them Charles Sumner, wrote congratulating her upon her success, and she found herself lionized by a public that was grateful for this glimpse of life at the front. About this time, Miss Alcott published in the Atlantic Monthly her beautiful poem, The Rose Flute, a tribute to the character of that noble poet, and the most perfect piece of verse that the author ever made. A new and abridged edition of Moods appeared also, and owing to the popularity of hospital sketches, won a gratifying success. From this time, Miss Alcott had no difficulty in finding a market for her wares. Her short stories and sketches were eagerly accepted by the best magazines and papers, and she even had some difficulty in keeping up with the demand for them. In 1865, Miss Alcott made her first visit to Europe. She started as companion to an invalid lady, as her means did not allow her to make the trip otherwise. But later she joined her own friends and completed her visit in their company. This was a delightful experience, restful and health-giving to the hard-working author. It was her first real holiday, and she enjoyed it with that fresh, buoyant spirit that was so characteristic of her. Upon her return, a Boston publisher asked her for a book for girls, and from this demand, which she feared at first she could not comply with, grew her famous story, Little Women. The full power and beauty of this story was unsuspected by the author, and she was dazzled by the brilliant success which followed. Thinking that she was merely writing down the merry life of a happy family of girls, she was in reality making a transcription of typical New England girlhood and putting the touches to a picture of rare value. All the best in New England blood and manners filters through the pages of this book. Pure living, noble thinking, high ideals here find a place and reflect the girlhood which was blessed by the friendship of Emerson, Hawthorne, Thoreau, and other of her father's associates, and which was guarded so tenderly by that father himself. This book, which may be said to have heralded a new literature for children, was hailed with acclamation by the young audience for whom it was written. The publishers were busy keeping up with the demand for books, and Miss Alcott began to receive letters from all over the country demanding another volume. England, France, Holland, and Germany brought out rapid editions, and by the time the second volume was ready, Miss Alcott's name was a household word wherever children read books. This height, so unexpectedly but justly won, Miss Alcott never lost. For nearly 20 years longer, the children of the land gave her the first place in their affections, while each successive book seemed to them a personal gift from the author. She was the friend and ideal of thousands of boys and girls who never saw her, but who felt beyond a doubt that their interests were known and their hopes and ambitions dear to her. Far beyond what the author ever dreamed, these sweet and true stories of young life influenced the generation to which they appealed. Beyond what she had hoped, the little lessons of duty and noble living, learned in the old house at Concord, brought rich and noble harvest to far wider fields. The home life of the family was at this time very happy. The eldest daughter, Meg, was married and had 2 charming children, the Demi and Daisy of Little Men, though both babies were in reality boys. The youngest daughter, Amy, was making progress in the study of art, and Jo herself was happy because she could earn money to make the others happy. Soon after the publication of Little Women, she went abroad with her sister May, the Amy of Little Women. Remaining 4 years, work as well as travel occupied the time. The day she arrived home, her father met her at the dock with a red placard pinned to the carriage window announcing the publication of Little Men. Like its forerunner, it scored a great success. The other numbers of the Little Women series grew rapidly. Old-Fashioned Girl, 8 Cousins, and Rose in Bloom being perhaps the favorites next to the initial volumes. The Spinning Wheel series, Aunt Jo's Scrap Bag series, and Lulu's Library, 3 volumes for small children, appeared as the years went on. Miss Alcott was also the author of a novel called A Modern Mephistopheles, published anonymously in the No Name series. One of her best-known books, Work, is found on the incidents of her own experience in her girlhood days when money was scarce in the Alcott family and the young daughters were striving in every way to lift the burden from father and mother. Her sister Mary married and died abroad, leaving her baby girl to Miss Alcott, and to this little niece she gave henceforth a mother's love. Her own mother and father were ever her dearest care, and her greatest happiness lay in the knowledge that she had relieved their old age from want. Miss Alcott died after a short illness in Boston in 1888. Time had given to her the reward she would have chosen above all others, the knowledge that her work brought not only success, but that it carried its own message of life's great intention to each young heart that it reached. And isn't that just lovely to hear more about her life? It's one of the things I love so much about literature and art is that it can remain timeless. And over 100 years later, it still touches our hearts. So I'm glad for the opportunity to share this with you and hope it brings some inspiration and love to your heart as well. And so I wish you a blessed night's sleep. I wish you sweet dreams. Your angels are watching over you. Know that you are precious in this world and that you are a gift. So you rest and receive the love. And we will connect again soon.